My name is Gawley. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Get Invited. So we're an event ticketing and event registration service based in Northern Ireland, but have customers all over the world. So my talk today was really about, trying to inspire companies here in Northern Ireland to consider, entering the US market, getting some customers on board in the US and providing them with some advice on how to actually do that.
We're still very much a startup based in Belfast. We've been going for around 18 months now. And in those 18 months, I've spent quite a bit of time in the US getting customers and doing some market validation. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. I want to share some of those experiences and give you some advice as well. So to start off, I think you've got to ask yourself the question that, why visit the US? This worked for us because we're a startup company, but I think this can work for anyone in the digital sector. You should be thinking about this question, whether you're a freelancer, a startup or an established business. And there's a number of reasons. So it's a good opportunity to validate your business in the USA. There's a saying in Northern Ireland that nobody here is going to tell you that your baby's ugly. So if you have a business, everybody's going to tell you that it's a great idea and you should definitely do it. But if you really want to test that business idea, you're going to have to go outside Northern Ireland and go into some of these more competitive markets and test it there where people aren't going to be as kind to you, put it a nice way. But also, there's things that might not necessarily work here in Northern Ireland. We're not as innovative or technologically advanced as the US in some respects. So there's ideas that might not necessarily work here. They could certainly work over there. It's also a huge market opportunity, and it's very difficult for people here to actually comprehend how big this opportunity is. We've 1.8 million people here. There's 320 million people in the US. You can build companies that turn over hundreds of millions of dollars in the US alone using that domestic market. So there's a huge opportunity to do business there. It's also good for customer acquisition, particularly for startups and businesses here, especially if you want to get a lighthouse customer on board. And by that I mean you're getting a huge big organization like Microsoft or Google, or somebody that's going to provide you with a huge amount of value whenever you come back to Northern Ireland and help you build validation. It's also good to build your network. We've very talented and experienced people here in Northern Ireland, but there's people that are on just a completely different level over there in the US that we don't have here. And I think it's very important that you start to network for those people, learn them, and have them as people that you can reach out to. It's also a good opportunity to learn as well, to learn about business, to learn about doing business in different cultures, and also learn about yourself and build your own self-confidence. So if you've decided that this is for you and you'd like to go to the US, I think my most important piece of advice that I can give you is that you have to be prepared to actually make the effort and go over there. You won't get customers or you won't build a network by sitting behind your laptop here in Northern Ireland. The US is incredibly competitive and there's a huge amount of noise. So in San Francisco alone, there's something like 28,000 tech startups. I think we have around 1,500 in Northern Ireland alone, so there's a lot of noise over there. And if you really want to be in with a chance of speaking to customers or investors or getting to talk to anyone over there, you've got to be prepared to make the effort and get on a plane and go over there. You'll be taken much more seriously. There's a lot of fluff over there, people that go around with ideas and say they're doing this or that, but they're not really. And I think people are very aware of that over there. If you're making the effort to travel halfway across the world to go and speak to someone, they're much more likely to give you that opportunity. In order to prepare for going over there, you're going to have to do some groundwork. You're not just going to jump on a plane and arrive and hope for the best. And I think, you've got to decide where the best location to visit is. It's not like Northern Ireland where you can drive across the country in 60 minutes. If you're a tech startup, you're probably going to want to go somewhere like San Francisco. If you're in the life sciences, San Diego, or possibly New York, Dallas, those kind of places. So consider where it is you're going to go and then plan your trip around that. You can't just jump on a plane and arrive in the US the way you can in most places. You're going to either need to get a visa waiver, also called the ESTA, which is around £40. It gives you multiple entries to the US over a 2-year period. You're not really supposed to do this whenever you're going on business activities. You can maybe get away with it once or twice, but if you're going to be going over there regularly, I'd advise you get a B1 visa. It's a little bit more effort because you have to go down to the US Embassy and do an interview, but it's around £120, and that allows you multiple entries into the US for 6 months, up to 6 months at a time, and typically they'll give you that visa for a 10-year period. It's going to be quite expensive. A return flight to San Francisco is around £1,000. You can get them for Aer Lingus occasionally do direct flights from Dublin for around £500 return, and it's going to cost you about £1,500 a week just to be there for accommodation, Food is incredibly expensive. The last time I was over, my average meal was around 12 to 15 pounds, even for just things like a sandwich and a drink. But the good news is that this is the only place where you can get this. We can't get this in London or anywhere else. Invest in I are amazing for supporting this kind of stuff in Northern Ireland. So if you're not an Invest in I client, become one. They'll give you up to 50%, they'll give you 50% of your airline costs going over there. So £1,000 flight becomes £500, and you can get £100 a day to help with your accommodation and subsistence costs. So you're going to want to set up some meetings with people when you go over there. And the first thing that you should do, whenever we did this, the first time I went over, like 2 of us just booked a flight in some hotels. We didn't know anybody in the US, and we were just going over there and starting from scratch. But the first thing we did was leverage our network here in Northern Ireland. So, tapping people here that might potentially know people over there. They might not get you in front of the people that you want to speak to, but they might get you in front of people over there that can help you when you get over. Use Invest in I and Enterprise Ireland support. So Invest in I have a thing called TAS, which is Trade Advisory scheme. You pay them £400 and you get 2 or 4 days of mentoring by somebody on the ground in the US who will set you up with a whole bunch of meetings. We've used this on one occasion. They've got us meetings with C-level executives in Microsoft and some really, really good people. They also have people on the ground over there, so it's a good idea to go and meet the Invest in I team in the US, get to know them, and they're incredibly helpful and will help you will make various introductions for you. It's also fine to send cold emails to people. A lot of the meetings that I set up, I just cherry-picked people online that I wanted to speak to. I just sent them an email and asked them to come and meet you. I find Northern Ireland is a tough place to do this. It takes ages for people to get back to you, and people aren't as open to meeting you. And if they are, it's going to take 6 months. Generally, if you're making the effort to travel over there to speak to people, they will be quite open to meeting you, giving you advice and helping you. You should target connectors as well, so find people who are really well connected over there that can introduce you to other people. So I was very fortunate to meet one guy the first time I was over. So 3 people told me to speak to him, and he's from here originally, but he's super connected over there. And I'm constantly working on that relationship. Every time he's home, I'll take him for dinner, a few pints, but he makes loads of introductions for me whenever I'm over there. But again, going over there and making the effort provides that validation and credibility that'll allow people to help you. Play the Irish card as well. So again, the Americans love it. Everybody in America has an Irish cousin or they're related to someone, so you can always use that as a kind of foot in the door to get speaking to people. And aim high. People are generally much more down to earth over here. You can aim for the CEO or the CFO of quite big tech companies, maybe not Google or Facebook, but you can aim for people that are high up in these organizations, and they will be prepared to come and meet you. And I'm going to show an example of this in a second. This is the email that I sent out to people. I didn't know any of these people. I had no idea who I was. I just sent them an email saying, I'm coming over from Ireland to New York for 2 weeks, working on this startup. Here's what we do. Given your expertise in social media, I'd love to buy you a coffee and ask you a few questions, for half an hour. Send these emails out locally, I found gets very little response, but doing this over there, people were getting back to me. Some people were out of town, they couldn't meet me, but most people did actually make the effort to come and meet me for coffee or invite me into their office. They gave me advice, they made introductions to really good people while I was over there, and it really, really helped just by making the effort to just reach out to these people. We actually sent an email to the CFO of Square, which is an $8 billion payment company in San Francisco. And just say, we're working on this ticketing startup, Square Run Events, we'd love to come in and pitch to you. We had a little bit of help with Invest in I to do that. And 2 hours later, we got an email back from the CFO of Square. She's originally from Northern Ireland. And she was like, yeah, certainly, there's no point in me coming to the meeting, but I'll introduce you to my events manager. Come in and pitch to him. We got the invitation to Square. 48 hours later, we were both in Square, which is this immense big building that they share with Uber. Pitch and get invited to these guys. That kind of thing doesn't happen over here. We don't have companies this big, and if we did, they probably wouldn't be open to letting startups come in and pitch to them. And I've done this in various other places as well. I've pitched to Square, I've been into Facebook, I've been in Google twice, I've been to Stripe. I've been pitching, get invited to all these guys, and all these companies, and they're all very much open to just, having you in, giving you a bit of lunch, to find out what you're working on. And all it takes is just, a couple of emails and reaching out to people and making that effort. Networking at events over there, it's not as good as at home, I don't find. Most of the network events are, you need to be very selective. You probably won't find the really good people at those events. They're mostly full of startups that are just getting in your face and pitching their startup at you. And it can be a little bit intimidating coming from Northern Ireland because we don't have that kind of aggressive attitude. And there's also a lot of people who are pitching to the startups, trying to get recruitment. So, every couple of minutes somebody's coming up to you asking you if you're recruiting and if you want to hire them for a job. And some of it's crazy. Like one guy was pitching to me one night and I said, like, we're not hiring. He was like, not even for an experimental position, you could just bring me in and, see what I could do for you. And it's really crazy. So I think if you're setting up meetings over there, ask those people that you're meeting for recommendations for the best networking events. The really good events probably won't be listed on meetup.com or any of those platforms, but people will point you in the right direction. Culture and protocol. So it's very, very, it's similar in some ways, but it's very different doing business over there. Things happen incredibly quickly. You get meeting people in hours or days, not weeks or months. And you need to be really quick to respond to those people. Follow up with people in hours, not weeks. If you have a meeting, send an email straight after, thank them, connect with them on LinkedIn. Don't wait weeks because they're just going to forget about you or what you were pitching to them. There's zero tolerance for lateness. You get one chance with people. You can't arrive in 15, 20 minutes late. You shouldn't really do that here either, but we're a wee bit more lax about it. And it takes a lot longer to travel to places, so you should allow yourself plenty of time to get there and allow yourself time to get lost as well, just in case. Also, adopt the local language. As it's color, not color with a U in it. Americans like to do business with Americans. It's going to be very difficult if you're given the impression that you're, a Belfast-based company. It's just breezing in for 2 weeks. If you're using their language and you're making it appear as if you're, immersing yourself in the culture over there, you have much more chance of people being open to helping you. Dress appropriately. So, what is, on the East Coast in New York, you might wear a shirt and a blazer, nice pair of trousers and shoes. If you rock up to a startup in San Francisco, you're probably going to look pretty stupid dressed like that. People turn up to meetings in shorts and flip-flops. I've met CEOs of medium-sized startups that they're very, very casual. But the opposite is also true. You're not going to walk into a meeting in New York in a pair of flip-flops. The culture is also very different. They don't really have the kind of 9-to-5 culture that we have here on the West Coast. And the hardest thing I think is they think really, really big. We're all very locally focused here in Northern Ireland. In America, they're thinking about $100 million companies, billion-dollar companies, and massive amount of revenue. And if you want to talk to these people, you can't be talking to them with your kind of local, mentality. You've got to get yourself up onto, their level of thinking. This is me in the ball pit in Google, just to illustrate how different the culture is. So I was able to just go and have lunch. You can have lunch whenever you want. You can just play. You can take a nap if you want. It's very much focused on employee happiness and a very relaxed type culture. And one of my favorite stories is about this festival called Launch Festival. So the first time I went over last year, I got meeting this guy called Luke Lightning, who has the best name ever. And he was introduced to me by somebody based over here in Northern Ireland. I went and met this guy for a curry. Just bought him lunch and said, I'm over, can you introduce me to some people? He was introducing me to people that worked for our multi-billion-dollar competitors or used to work for them. And then at the end of the conversation, he says, by the way, we're organising this startup conference. It's going to be the largest startup conference in the world. It's 11,000 people here in San Francisco next March. We're looking for a ticketing system. Do you want to come in and pitch to the team this afternoon? And I was like, certainly. So went away, came back literally an hour later, was pitching to their CEO. And this event is run by a guy called Jason Calacanis, who's a major investor in the US. He's invested in Uber and all these massive companies. He's a TV show host. And in there pitching to those guys, and a couple of days later we had that deal, and we came back to Northern Ireland, and we're just like, that kind of thing would never happen here. We don't have those kinds of events, and we certainly, deals like that do not happen over a curry on a Monday afternoon. But it just shows you that how easy it is to go over there and get huge big customers on board. They provide you with immense validation. This was a great story to tell at home, but also the next time I went over to San Francisco, whenever I was meeting event organizers, they'd all seen that we were doing this event, and they held us in much higher, they gave us much more credibility because we were actually doing this, and we weren't just coming in, just talking the talk. It's the culture, technology-wise, is very, very different. We don't have self-driving cars driving around Belfast or Derry, and you've got to be quite kind of on the ball about learning about these things when you're talking to people over there, and immerse yourself in this technology. Use Uber, try all the things out, and then use that as inspiration whenever you come home to apply to your own business. And then finally, just like a couple of words of warning about this. If you're going over to the US and you spend over 31 days in a single trip, or 184 days per year, you have to pay US income tax on all of your worldwide earnings. So you'll pay tax here, and you'll also pay tax to the IRS in the US. So you can never, if you're going over, make sure it's always under 31 days or less than 184 days in the year. There's some really dangerous neighborhoods over there. You could be standing in the best part of town 1 minute in San Francisco, and then you can literally walk into the next street and you're hearing gunshots and people selling crack to kids on the street. So you want to be quite wary of your surroundings and where to go and where not to go. It's a bit more dangerous than Northern Ireland. People will come up to you in the street, they'll ask you for money, they'll beg you for money, they'll hassle you about things, and they can be quite aggressive, particularly in San Francisco, where a lot of them are mentally ill, who are just freely roaming the streets. It's completely crazy. So you've got to have your wits about you. Don't look like a tourist. If you've got your business attire on and you know where you're going, you're probably going to be all right, but you don't want to be standing around looking like with a huge map in Market Street in San Francisco. And that's me. Thank you very much. I've actually written a blog post about this, so the link's up there if that's of any use to anyone.
We're going to hold on to Kyle for a couple of minutes before lunch. Is there anybody out there with any questions? Can't see.
Yeah, I can't see a thing.
Hi, Carl. Just a quick question. It was great hearing you speak, by the way, and what you've done is fantastic. We get invited. Just wanted to ask, you've obviously done really well exporting what you do out to the States and taking that journey, but for someone who maybe hasn't had that amount of experience or success in developing a relationship with Invest and I, it'd be interesting just for you to kind of outline how you took that step to building a relationship with them so they could support you, because that sometimes works really well and other times people might not feel like they get the same amount of success with that.
Yeah, we were quite fortunate in that we had that relationship with Invest and I pretty much from day one. So we had the grant in place to support this, but I think you can probably do it, outside of that if you're prepared to go and even just speak. Like the guy on the ground over there is called Brian Glynn, and I would say if you just send Brian an email and I say, look, I'm coming over from Northern Ireland, I want to meet some people. He'll be quite happy to facilitate some of those introductions for you. The key thing is just showing that you're serious about coming over to do it, because he's going to put his reputation on the line to do it. So there's other people over there from here that you can tap for helping you to make connections as well. But you could do it without Invest and I. In terms of getting the connections, it's fine to just send people emails and ask them to come and meet you. And once you get the first 5 meetings set up, you can go and meet those people, and typically they'll introduce you to loads of other people that you need to be talking to when you're over there.
And can I just add something as well? Make sure you're speaking to the right person in Invest NI, because my experience of them has been as a very positive organisation, but make sure that you do speak to the right person, because there's different people with different remits, and someone that you're speaking to may not necessarily have the same opinion as someone else. So try different avenues within it would also be my advice. But in my experience, I've found them quite an easy organisation to work with from my point of view. Is there any other questions?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're a graduate from the University of Ulster.
Yep.
And part of this project was developed while you were still a student. I'm just wondering, what can the FE and HE sectors do better for our young people while they're still on board in their further higher education? What can we do better to support young entrepreneurs?
I think, at undergraduate level, we didn't have good kind of entrepreneurial infrastructure. This started as a master's project, which, was a bit kind of different to undergraduate. It was very entrepreneurial focused. And I think, one of the biggest challenges is giving people the confidence to go and do it and giving them that belief that we can. I think that, the big problem in Northern Ireland is people don't think that we can. Facebook can't come out of Northern Ireland, these things can't come out of here. It's trying to inspire that kind of belief into people as early as possible and giving them the confidence to go out and do it. Acquiring the skills is probably the easier part of it, but it's actually having that kind of drive to go out and do it. And we're starting to see more and more of it, but we need to be more aggressive about telling the success stories here to try and inspire other young people to go and have a go at it themselves and try and steer them away from the kind of traditional, you go and get a 9-to-5 job in Google or Facebook. Karen?
I was just wondering, obviously I've been fortunate to sort of see your rise from University of Ulster, right, from my days in Belfast. I'm wondering, since you've entered the US market, how sort of rapidly have you seen that you've had to develop and redevelop your product in terms of their feedback? Has that been something that you've sort of had on a learning curve from their expectations?
I think there was things we built over here, and we went and showed to people here, and they really understood what we were doing. We took it over there, and we were like, look, we were thinking of this, but we didn't really get good feedback at home. Customers were like, this is amazing. How quickly can we build this? And I was saying to Dave, our CTO, can we get this built this week for these guys? So I think you can come up with really good ideas for features that maybe wouldn't be adopted early on here, that'll be adopted really quickly over there. And they'll also give you ideas for things that you'd never think of over here. So I think it's, in terms of like a product validation exercise, even if you've taken out, sales, it's definitely a good exercise to go over there, get inspiration and get good product feedback.
Just wondering, from the in terms of your business, whenever it, what stage of the business did you think, right, this is going to get bigger fast, or was there a sort of, we need to change this up, we need to go somewhere else? Was there like a stage where you're like, this isn't working, we need to move this on, or was it, this is working, we need to shift it up a gear?
In terms of going into the US market?
Yeah, it was more what stage of getting invited were you thinking to yourself, right, we need to shift this up a gear, or this isn't working, we need to move into another area?
It was around 8 months into it before we decided that we'll go to the US and try and scale it there. And to be honest, that was too long. We should have did it 2 months after it. We spent a lot of time trying to validate the product in the market and talking to customers in Northern Ireland, and in hindsight, a lot of it was a waste of time. We should have went over there much earlier. We just started talking to people over there, getting good feedback, as soon as possible. I think for most businesses, you can't really start off, especially with tech startups, with the mentality you're going to scale this in Northern Ireland. I think from day one, you've got to be thinking that it's not ultimately going to work as a Northern Ireland business, and you're going to have to go and get customers, whether that's in the US or London or Europe.
Any other questions?
Hiya, Kyle. Do you think that there is an attitude problem here with regards to people almost refuting technology, especially in the event sphere? Or not a problem as such, maybe more of a fear?
A fear of using technology? I think the biggest shock about going to San Francisco is there is so much consumer technology that's being used by the average person that we don't even know exists here. For example, there's a really good startup at the minute called GetAround, where you basically, if your car is going to be sitting in your office car park for the day, you put it on GetAround, somebody will pay you an hourly fee to rent your car for the day. Now, this is a huge thing in San Francisco, but everybody's laughing because nobody over here would actually take the risk and do that out of fear. I think we're very, there are people who are very innovative, over here, but I think the general majority of people are quite technology averse. I don't know whether it's out of fear or just because we're not exposed to it over here.
I tend to think, I hear what Kyle is saying, but I tend to think as well, the pace of change is accelerating. I see that with my nephews and nieces who are much younger than me, who they're very early adopters, even what Culture Tech is doing, bringing Minecraft into schools. So I think the agenda is being pushed. So I take the point there is a gap, but I think that gap is being closed. Any other questions? Sorry, I'm not having a fight with you, Kyle. Any other questions?
Cheers, sorry. See at sort of initial startup phase, how do you go around attracting sort of coding talent, people to help bring your business to the next level? How did you attract that talent initially on a very low income?
I was probably very fortunate and unique in that I met my tech co-founder in uni. So we studied together and we started working on this, while we were in uni with no money. We didn't have to go and find that tech talent to bring on board, but it's a question a lot of people ask, and it seems to be a big problem in Northern Ireland, is finding particularly kind of CTO co-founders, because again, the mentality over here is, the developers go and get a job in a big corporation somewhere where it's safe and secure, and they don't want to take the startup thing seems very risky. So I can't really give you a solid answer as to where you would find those people. Possibly considering, maybe looking outside of Northern Ireland, maybe in London or in the US. But it does seem to be tough to find more the kind of the founding talent as opposed to, recruiting people.
Or you could take a punt, even go into a university. I know people who've done that, put up ads, gone into a university, managed to find some people, and that's how you find your...
Yeah, I think it's just a case of not being so focused on the skills and trying to find somebody with the right attitude that's going to be prepared to learn and do whatever it takes, who can take the risk and who has that entrepreneurial hunger. But those people are hard to find.